Welcome to Red Rubber Video Experience.
Digital worlds. Virtual locations that are home to thousands of players, bustling with human activity, and are brought to life by the simple fact that somebody is there. There's clans running around, online friend groups trying to stay connected to one another, and people, whether they know it or not, making memories. If there's one thing you can be sure of, it's that here, no matter how hard you try, it's pretty impossible to be alone. But what happens when the lights go out for the last time and these places that were meant to host hundreds and hundreds of players are suddenly left completely empty? I've always been interested in what exactly happens to a game after it dies, after all the players are gone and the server just sits there silently, waiting for a match that will never come. On the surface, it's as simple as the game being empty and abandoned, but I think it's important to ask, why? Why is this game dead? What's stopping people from just getting back on and playing a match or two? And why, after all these years, are there still people sticking around, desperately trying to keep it alive? I could probably write an essay about any one of these questions and give some insane dissertation about why a given game is dead, but I think it'd be a lot more interesting to just go out and play them for myself. So today, I'm going to visit the ruins of a bunch of different online multiplayer worlds, jump through a ridiculous amount of hoops to actually get them up and running, and become the digital equivalent of a grave robber by exploring some old, dead games. Garry's Mod is not a dead game. It's actually pretty far from it. It's been out for almost 20 years now, and not only remains culturally relevant online, but still boasts a pretty sizable player count. That is true at least for the modern Steam version of Garry's Mod. But sitting silently in the background, rotting away after years of being neglected, is a version of Gmod that is pretty undeniably dead. Garry's Mod 9. Gmod 9 is one of the oldest versions of Garry's Mod, released all the way back in 2005. Honestly, it took quite a bit of work to get this version of Gmod to play nice with my modern computer, but once I got it working, I was pretty surprised to see a somewhat full server list. It goes without saying there wasn't a single soul in any one of these servers, but I was glad there were at least some signs of life still left. I decided to dive right in with this old racing server called Buggy Racer. I spawned into the Buggy Racer server and was greeted by a pretty bare-bones racetrack. There was a big long road that went all the way around, a little grass median with some cars and a building of unknown usage, and, the thing that really brought it all together, a giant platform where spectators could not only watch the race unfold, but also place bets on who would win. Now, normally this platform right here would probably be the most unnotable part of this entire server, but the fact that no one was around made it the most interesting to me. It was really big and clearly made to host a pretty large amount of people, so to think that it's probably been over 15 years since this thing was at its max capacity is a pretty weird feeling. I could perfectly picture people spamming music over their microphone, cheering on the racers below. After I got done romanticizing a random old platform on a random old map, I decided I would try to queue up for a race, assuming that the server would see there's only one person and just start it up instantly. Instead, it started waiting for another player and wouldn't start the race until one joined, which was pretty bad news because the likelihood of that happening was basically zero. That was honestly kind of a bummer because I could perfectly picture a big line of cars all speeding down the raceway, but without another player, there was no way to experience for myself what it would have actually been like. Just as I finished thinking about how much that sucked, a random ass guy joined the game. I started to think about how insanely slim the odds were that anyone else was playing a 20-year-old version of Garry's Mod at 3 p.m. on a Wednesday. I started to think about how the guy's name was Minge Balls, and most importantly, I thought about asking him how he ended up here. Before I could do any of that though, the race started and I was going head-to-head with Minge Balls in the world's glitchiest Jeep. I'm not gonna lie, he smoked me twice in a row. I was complete garbage at driving the car, and it's a lucky thing this game is dead because it would be very embarrassing if a full server of people could see just how bad I was at racing. I queued up for a third race so I could maybe win and leave with some dignity, but just as fast as Minge Balls appeared, he vanished. I took a brief moment to process how weird that entire interaction was. questioned if Mingeballs was a real person at all, or just a figment of my twisted imagination, and then headed back to the server list to visit the next abandoned server. A roleplay server. The idea of visiting a dead roleplay server was pretty interesting to me because, even to this day, RP servers are among some of the most populated servers in Gmod, boasting ridiculously high player counts and being pretty notorious for never being empty. This roleplay server, though, was dead quiet. I walked around pretty aimlessly, looking for stuff to do, or signs of life, or really anything, but without anyone else online, my desire to engage with any of the roleplay features that were laid out was pretty much zero. I mean, I guess I could have sat in this coffee shop and just roleplayed with myself, but I don't have schizophrenia, so I didn't do that. For whatever reason, despite my internet being just fine, the player controller was super laggy and glitched out basically every time I took a step. I think this might have been because the server had been up for so long without ever restarting, which can lead to glitches, but it also could have just been because this game mode is poorly put together. I have no idea. I walked around this dead city a bit more, pretty aimlessly, and tried to imagine a time when this place would be full of people shooting at each other, stealing each other's shit, and getting dragged to timeout by an admin for RDMing other players. I came across Life eventually, but that Life happened to be soulless NPCs whose entire job it was to try and sell me shit that I could not afford. This guy was trying to sell me a Nissan Pathfinder, no doubt with a blown head gasket, and Alex Vance was trying to sell me a banana for $27. I looked around some more and found a hotel that was pretty much empty, and considering there was no one around to pay for a room, decided to just make myself at home and liven the place up as much as I could. I ended up with a pretty cozy place to stay and had basically just created the last outpost of human civilization in this entire server. I ended my night the same way everyone ends their night in a big city, by walking down this large dark tunnel and seeing where it would take me. Nowhere, it turns out. There's probably some deep symbolism here about this server being completely dead and the largest road in the city leading to an empty ethereal void, but I'll let you come up with that one yourself. There really wasn't much left for me in the abandoned world of Garry's Mod 9, but I went in expecting complete and total emptiness and actually ended up having some pretty fun moments with the few lost souls who still roam this forsaken realm. Like Mingeballs. The Xbox 360. Maybe the greatest console to ever release, and definitely the first to really usher in the golden age of online multiplayer. Thanks to backwards compatibility, the actual retail titles that came out for this thing are able to live on and enjoy active player bases, but there's one very important type of game that the 360 was home to that seems to have been completely forgotten about. Xbox Live indie games. There were so many games made for this service back in the day, and I have very fond memories of spending anywhere from 99 cents to $5 to play these really janky indie games with my friends. And as cool as that sounds, you unfortunately just can't play them anymore. At all. I thought about trying emulation to get these games working, but none of the 360 emulators currently on the market can even so much as boot an indie game. So the only way I'd be able to even think about playing them again is if I did something ridiculous like go out and buy an Xbox 360. So I went out and bought an Xbox 360. The first one I tried out was APOC Z, an online survival multiplayer game that was released in 2014 and pretty much only existed to fill the void of consoles not being capable of running DayZ. I spawned into the empty world of APOC Z and was kinda surprised by just how decent the graphics were. There was a good amount of post-processing and bloom, which really was not commonplace for Xbox indie games at all, and from what I could tell, the map was fairly large. I started to take off for the closest sign of civilization that I could see, and was instantly teleported halfway across the map for no reason. This is the only time that has ever happened to me, and no matter what I tried, I could not get it to happen again. I did my best to ignore the fact that I had just broken the laws of physics and started off towards the nearest town, where I met up with a giant horde of the undead. I helplessly tried to fight them off using the stupidest looking punch animation that I've ever seen, and to the surprise of no one, that did not work. I spawned in again, determined to last more than 2 minutes this time, and realized that the game gives the player an axe every time they die. Granted, it was an axe that didn't even fit in my hands correctly, but I will take anything at this point if it means I don't have to see that stupid punch animation ever again. The axe turned out to be a goated ass weapon, and the fact that it killed zombies in one hit meant that I could finally actually play the game. I made it to a point of interest thanks to my awesome-ass axe and came across a big ol' sniper rifle that honestly had a pretty cool model and was animated fairly well for an Xbox indie game. I did what anyone does when they pick up a big-ass sniper rifle and immediately used it to hit some sick hard scopes on a giant mob of the undead. I went over into third-person mode where I found out that walking around with a sniper rifle equipped makes you move around like RoboCop, which I consider to be maybe the best feature that this game has. It was at this point that I realized that this was pretty much the entire game. You spawn in, die a bunch, get a gun, and that seems to be as far as the developers ever thought anyone would get. I walked along this long road and came across another small town, and despite having an arsenal of a giant sniper rifle and a shotgun from Call of Duty Black Ops 2, I still managed to get overwhelmed by zombies and die. But that's honestly fine, because getting overwhelmed by zombies and dying is pretty much the only thing to do in Apox Z. I'm not sure how the PvP feels, and I probably won't ever know considering it's been over 5 years since anyone else has ever played this game, but if the rest of Apox Z is anything to go off of, it probably felt really bad. Apox Z is a game where the frame rate is low, and the chances of surviving more than 10 minutes is even lower. It is most definitely a bad game, but considering it was 99 cents and its entire purpose for existing was to deliver a DayZ experience on console, I would say at the very least it did its job. As one final salute to the beautiful world of Apox Z, I decided to walk aimlessly in one direction until I slowly started to take damage and finally died. Apox Z might not be a perfect game or even a good game, but it's a shame to see any game from my childhood with 0 players online, and personally I think that the funny RoboCop walk is more than worth the 99 cents that I paid for it 10 years ago. Total Miner Forge. This was an Xbox indie game that aimed to deliver a robust Minecraft experience on 360, and in my opinion, it does that pretty well. I used to play this game all the time as a kid, and there were these huge, heavily populated servers that had their own custom spawn areas, massive monuments, and dedicated teams of builders who would literally treat this game like it was their job. I loaded up Total Miner Forge, saw that there were no servers, obviously, and started my own public Xbox Live server to get right into the action. I am told that the best way to play Minecraft, or anything like Minecraft, is to mine and craft, so I got right into doing that. I did some digging, some mining, some crafting, and then forged a spear so that I could conquer lesser beings. Before I even really had time to get acquainted with the game, the sun was starting to set, which meant that it was time to build the shittiest house ever. It's a lucky thing I did that because I took one step outside and was instantly pulled up on by a gang of goblins, spiders, and werewolves. That was a very scary experience, and I was honestly traumatized by the sight of a level 14 werewolf outside of my house, so I did what anyone would do in that situation, and I just went to bed. You might say that makes me a big pussy, but I disagree. That actually makes me a big baby. I spent the next day exploring some caves and actually found myself having quite a bit of fun with Total Miner. I don't know why, but I was expecting way less from this game, and my memory of it really wasn't that positive. But after wandering around Total Miner for a few hours, I came to slowly appreciate what it was and what it is. It was meant to be a stand-in for Minecraft before Minecraft was released on every console ever made, and the game, in its current dead state, played like a modded copy of the beta 1.7.3 version of Minecraft. It definitely is a Minecraft clone, but it's a pretty feature-complete one that has its own unique identity. Hey, real quick, I'm editing the video right now, and I just wanted to point out for reference how bad the other Xbox indie game Minecraft clones are, just so you can kind of appreciate how good Total Miner Forge is. Here's the second most popular Minecraft clone on the Xbox indie game store. Look at this, man, it sucks. It's terrible. Alright, bye. I know it probably seems pretty outdated and obsolete now considering how accessible Minecraft is, but Total Miner really was a special experience, and it definitely sucks to see it completely abandoned like this. Total Miner not only gave me a nostalgic experience that I am very grateful for, it let me build what very well might be the last house ever built in the Xbox version of Total Miner, which I have to appreciate. Also, I swear I'm not trying to freak anyone out, but as I was getting B-roll for this part of the video, I stumbled across a deep cave that was filled with torches and looked a lot like someone had explored before. Which is pretty weird because I was literally the only player online. It was probably nothing though. Probably. I really love the Xbox Indie Game Store, and it sucks that playing any of these games requires so many annoying hoops to jump through that most people won't even bother. It's really sad to see hundreds and hundreds of games die off through no fault of their own. Maybe Microsoft will make some effort to archive them when the 360 servers go down, but I don't really see that happening, to be honest. The idea of a metaverse seems like a ridiculous concept, but also a relatively new one. I know seeing weird-ass Mark Zuckerberg step out from backstage to show off his stupid avatar seems like the kind of insanity that could only ever happen in the modern era, but the truth is, people have been trying to make this sort of digital metaverse thing pretty much ever since the internet came out. No game is a better example of that than Cybertown. Released all the way back in 1995, Cybertown was a 3D browser-based chat room that lets you walk around, talk to old people, play games in a social setting, and basically live in a virtual town. Cybertown eventually shut down, and no one has heard from the creators since, but a very dedicated group of people have been working really hard to bring it back online, so I figured I'd give that a try so I could immerse myself in the ultimate 90s vision of the future. The website was laid out exactly how it would have been in the early 2000s, and a banner sat on top of the webpage letting me know that this was chosen by Yahoo as the coolest chat site of 2001. What an honor. I signed up for an account, adopting the very futuristic alias LilliumLetifer, and for the first time, stepped into Cybertown. The first thing I noticed about Cybertown was just how terrible the controls are. The keyboard didn't do anything useful, and basically all of my navigation had to be done with the mouse. I guess I should have expected that, considering this is a 90s browser game, but man, it made moving around really, really annoying. I very poorly attempted to navigate the Cybertown Plaza, tossed a hello in chat just in case any humans came online, and stared very skeptically at this sign that claimed Cybertown was home to 500,000 citizens. For some reason, I could not help but doubt that. Continuing my stroll through this deserted plaza, it became very clear to me that Cybertown's political ethos of choice was good old American-style capitalism, as evidenced by these very large signs advertising soda and hamburgers. As I walked away, thinking about how mysteriously hungry I had just become, suddenly, a little blue man appeared before me and seemed very eager to engage me in conversation. I introduced myself as LilliumLetifer, laughed a little bit when he responded with, "Hey Willie," and he began talking about how bright the future was for Cybertown and how excited he was for new citizens to join. I wanted to ask him why he was still playing this game or how long he'd been a resident of Cybertown, but it seemed like he was pretty eager for me to explore the world on my own, so I took his advice and began traveling to locations outside of the plaza. The first place I checked out was the City Hall. I walked down this big long hallway and came out to a grand hall. It was pretty well made, featured a bunch of Art Deco style posters, and was really brought together by the giant rotating orb in the middle of the room. I explored some more, but there really wasn't much to see because I think the main attraction of the level was supposed to be the aforementioned giant orb. I'm not super familiar with 90s computer graphics technology, but I imagine it was a pretty big deal at the time to be able to render a giant orb in a web browser, which would explain why the rest of the level wasn't very fleshed out. I remembered at this point that each level in Cybertown had its own chat room, and all of the messages sent, no matter how old, would be saved in it for anyone to see until basically the end of time. Like any futuristic cyber world, though, it was mostly just full of the ramblings of a lonely, 30-year-old AI chatbot.
Why didn't Scarecrow win an award? Because he was outstanding in his field. How do you mend a jack-o'-lantern? With a pumpkin patch.
The future is beautiful.
As I was leaving, I noticed a locked door that, for some reason, I was not allowed to go behind. Luckily, using my advanced computer knowledge, I was able to phase through it, which brought me to this weird little lobby area. In it, I found this framed picture of a very nice-looking fella named Flyby, who was apparently the mayor of Cybertown. Right next to that, a statue with a plaque on the bottom that displayed the Cybertown Pledge, a barely legible pledge thanks to the low-quality texture that read as follows. As a citizen of Cybertown, I pledge to uphold each of the principles of cyber etiquette and to encourage my fellow citizens to do the same. I will strive to maintain a family-oriented community for all, fellow citizens and newcomers alike. I wasn't really sure what to make of this pledge that I just swore allegiance to, and I'm not sure who this Flyby person is, but from what I can tell, he runs a nice and peaceful little town, and if you ask me, looks like a pretty trustworthy guy. I remember that the little blue man from earlier told me I had access to a home here in Cybertown, so I clicked my heels together 3 times and was transported to my house. The first thing I noticed about my home was just how not cyber it was in comparison to literally the rest of the world. It was weirdly an old-fashioned home with these big brick walls, an open living area, and a Pierre Renoir painting titled The Excursionist, dated 1888. Admittedly, I did not know that and had to use Google Lens to find out what that was, but I would like you to imagine a world where I did know that. The main living area of the home wasn't really anything special, but I was graciously given a window that stares directly at a brick wall, which would maybe explain why rent is $0. Tucked away in the corner of the living room was a really creepy, dimly lit space that had a pool table, or a billiards table. I don't really know what the difference is between the two, and I have no intention of learning it. Whatever game it was though, apparently, in the distant future of Cybertown, it was played with only 4 white balls. The future truly is beautiful. The last room in my house was locked behind the door and featured a dining table, a fireplace, and a big set of skylights that offered a breathtaking view of just a blue gradient. That seemed a little counterintuitive to me, considering I didn't even have a proper roof and the blue gradient was visible from literally anywhere in the house, but I'm not going to complain about a place that I live in rent-free. I exited my house and entered the cyberhood, which I assumed was a play on the word neighborhood, like it's a cyber neighborhood. After taking one look around though, I realized that cyberhood means exactly what it sounds like. It was a cyber version of a good old-fashioned hood. This was probably the first time during my entire visit to Cybertown that I was actually kind of glad no one else was online. I stumbled across a bar called Bar None, which had exactly one bar and a platform with a long pole on it. I assumed that this was put here so that the more open-minded residents of Cybertown could pay their way through Cyber College. I wandered more through this decrepit cyberhood and came across a trash can bonfire that looped maybe the worst sounding MP3 I've ever heard in my entire life. I get very scared of being in the hood for too long, so I did what any God-fearing cyber citizen would do and teleported somewhere a lot nicer. Prison. This is so weird to me, but Cybertown has a prison built into it that served to literally lock up anyone who was violating the laws of the land. There's a huge force field to keep people from escaping, and this very imposing NPC who stands guard 24/7. Not that that does much good. The jail was completely empty, and there were force fields on all sides to prevent people from even getting in. I'm not exactly sure what laws you'd have to break to actually end up here, but if these signs on the wall are any indication, it looks like instead of implementing some kind of chat filter so people wouldn't swear, Cybertown instead opts to just throw anyone who says naughty words into jail. It was kind of insane to imagine a time where this game was so popular that it required moderation to keep things in order, and I think the presence of an actual physical jail is a testament to just how seriously people took the social aspect of this game. For a lot of people back in the day, Cybertown wasn't just a webpage that happened to have a 3D chat room on it, it was an honest-to-God virtual world. While now the game is an empty shell of what it once was, and pretty much every location you visit will be eerily silent due to the lack of people, there was a time, long ago, where people kinda lived here. Cybertown is a product of a much simpler time. A time where the internet was much more than 5 or 6 corporate websites, and it genuinely felt like logging onto cyberspace was some futuristic, otherworldly experience. My time around the city was definitely a little unsettling at times due to the lack of players, but the few people I ran into along the way were all very, very friendly and just wanted more people to be able to experience the magic that they felt when they booted up Cybertown for the first time 28 years ago. I ended my journey through Cybertown on this small little island, complete with a pirate ship and palm trees. I took some time to reflect and thought about just how different the internet is now in comparison to how it was when Cybertown came out. Cybertown might be dead, but it's very clear to me that the memories people made here will always continue to live on. My memories include walking through a terrifying ghetto and talking to some strange little blue man, but those are memories all the same. I never had a PS3. I was a cool Xbox kid. I played Call of Duty map packs early and drank Halo 3 Mountain Dew by the gallon. And while I never really regretted my choice of console during the 7th generation of gaming, there was always one thing that the PS3 had that made me just a little bit jealous. PlayStation Home.
It's a place you can meet friends and make new ones. You alright, guys?
I live in Smethwick, Birmingham. If you want the fucking brawl, come down Smethwick Hospitality. I'll come out my house and I'll break your fucking leg.
PlayStation Home was probably Sony's weirdest idea ever. It was a big virtual world like Second Life where players could create an avatar, walk around, chat with people using this nasty keyboard, and most importantly, get advertised to. It was just a really weird experiment and something I don't think any of the major console manufacturers would even consider doing nowadays. Unfortunately, in 2015, after the PS3 was all but dead, Sony decided to pull the plug on PlayStation Home, deleting not only the entire game, but erasing nearly 7 years of content that had been made for it up to that point. If you watched this far into the video though, you should probably be able to guess what happened next. In 2020, a very talented group of people started a project to get PlayStation Home back online, exactly how it was before it shut down. I also went out and bought a PS3 for this part, which it turned out I don't even need because PlayStation Home runs just fine on an emulator. So if anyone wants this old PS3, I've left it in the bush somewhere in Peoria, Illinois. I loaded into PlayStation Home as my new OC, Pumper Jones, noticed that there was a chat feature, and took a brief moment to type out the first and last words I would ever speak in this world. I took a second to look around and appreciate the beautiful view from my apartment, and also stare at my own face in all of its 7th generation console glory. I got bored of that pretty quickly though, and was starting to feel insecure about my appearance, so I teleported over to the hub, where I'd hopefully be able to try on some new clothes. After touching down in the hub, I was given the opportunity to customize my avatar in any way I saw fit, which included just straight up turning him into Frank Woods from Call of Duty Black Ops. I won't lie, it took a massive amount of strength to not just play as Woods, but thanks to my inhuman resolve, I was able to press on. My goal here was to make my guy look as silly as I possibly could, and I figured the best way to do that would be to give him a mullet. That ended up just making him look like comedian Theo Von though, so I gave him a unibrow and mutton chops so I could maybe offset those similarities. I thought about making him big and fat, but that's a little too on the nose for my sense of humor, okay? So I opted instead to make him very skinny and very short. I completed his look by giving him a Mountain Dew hoodie, surfing shorts, name brand Adidas shoes, and a 9mm handgun. That's about the time I realized that I had totally failed my mission of making the silliest guy possible, and instead had accidentally handcrafted the coolest guy to ever live. I wasn't really sure where to go or what to do after finishing that up, and PS Home doesn't really try to guide you towards any specific locations. So I just walked around a little bit until I came across this abandoned mall. I entered the mall and immediately found it pretty interesting just how many real-life brands there were in here. There was a Diesel clothing store, an EA Sports store, and even a LucasArts store, which illustrates just how stuck in time this game is, because that company doesn't even exist anymore. Unfortunately, none of the stores actually worked, which I assume is a result of those servers being completely taken offline. Still though, I was able to enjoy this place for what it was, and spent an embarrassing amount of time just chilling and listening to that sweet, sweet abandoned mall ambience. Back at the hub world, I treated myself to a sad sitting down session and took a look at the various advertisements plastered all over the level. It was really weird seeing advertisements for things that don't even exist anymore, and billboards trying to sell me on the new Call of Duty Black Ops 2 map pack that came out 12 years ago. I pulled out my trusty little teleporter app thing and was honestly kind of overwhelmed by the amount of places I was able to go. I didn't really know what to pick, but after thinking about it for a little bit, I settled on the Adventure District. Admittedly, I'm being honest here, I only chose this because it reminded me of Uncharted 2. I figured there was no greater adventure for the Adventure District than to sit by myself at a bar alone, staring at some weird machinery. That very quickly made me pretty sad though, and I don't like being sad, so I got up from my seat and beelined directly towards this giant cannon, which I expected to do nothing, but ended up activating this weird minigame where you shoot cannonballs at targets. This was actually awesome as shit, and way more than what I expected when I heard that PlayStation Home has games built into it. After I got done LARPing as a pirate, I ran over to this music stand where they were playing a 24/7 mix of one single song from the Uncharted soundtrack. Naturally, I did what anyone should do in that situation and sat my white ass down and listened. After I paid my respects to Uncharted, I opened up my teleporter thingy again and took a look at the levels I could go to. It was at this point I realized just how many major brand tie-in levels there were, and each one seemed more interesting than the last. They had worlds that only existed to promote Sony products, worlds that were promoting skincare and acne medication, and even David Guetta World, which is so cool. But the one that really caught my attention was Toyota Prius World. Not because it was interesting or I thought it was cool, but because it was maybe the most shameless product placement in this entire game. The Toyota World had a minigame where you drove a Toyota Prius that controls like absolute butt and try to pick up these solar panels as fast as possible. I'm really not sure how to properly convey how terrible the controls were for this thing, but man, I'm telling you, they were really, really bad. This is the stupidest corporate tie-in game I have ever played, and I loved each and every second of it. After completely dominating in my Toyota Prius, I was in the mood for some more minigames, so I went to go check out this Ninja World. While it looked really interesting and was supposed to be some kind of third-person shooter, trying to play it hard crashed my game, so I can't really tell you if it was fun or not, and I guess I will never be Ninja. The game crashing made me feel like it was a good time to head over to my apartment and give it a little redesign. The furniture tool was actually really intuitive, and each piece of furniture you put down was affected by physics, which is awesome. I won't show you the long and tedious process of me designing my room, but I will take you on a short tour of the final result. This first area is my ultimate gamer setup, complete with a chair, a laptop, a lamp, and of course, a giant picture of the Joker from Joker. Next up, we have my shrine of 5 different cardboard cutouts of Hatsune Miku from the anime Hatsune Miku. Right next to that is my 2011 Scion TC, which if you know any Hatsune Miku lore, you know is her favorite car. Probably. And if you look next to that, you'll find my second picture of the Joker from Joker. Over here you'll find my kitchen, complete with a gorgeous view of some boats and some rocks, and also a big-ass plate of pancakes that are sitting concerningly close to the edge of the counter. Finally, we come to the end of the room, which I really wanted to stand out, so I furnished it with a single picture. It's another picture of the Joker. Yeah, it's just the Joker again. Thank you for watching the first ever episode of Ratlobber MTV Cribs. I hope you enjoyed this tour of my home. As I stared at these annoying little anime things that I myself put in my own room, I get a sudden desire to visit Japan. Luckily, this version of PlayStation Home unlocks all of the previously region-locked worlds that we wouldn't otherwise be able to play, and that includes Japan-exclusive virtual worlds. I touched down in the first Japanese level, called the Doko Demo Isyo Lounge, and found myself in this strange little charming Japanese town. The first thing I noticed was just how hilariously out of place I was, and the second thing I noticed was this little poster that I can't read, complete with these 2 little strange characters on it. If you speak Japanese, this sign probably means something to you, but to me it just looks like a little dog person who is experiencing some kind of pain. I walked a bit more through this cozy little town and came across another freaky character that offered to take a commemorative photo with me. I figured why not, and took a photo with him while brandishing my firearm so that he could get an authentically American experience. You can probably tell just by looking at the footage, but this place was really peaceful in comparison to just about every other place I've visited so far. I guess it was just another brand tie-in thing, but considering I don't really know what this brand is, it didn't really feel like a soulless cash grab to me. I took a stroll in the park and enjoyed the freshest of Japanese air, and then happened upon this little television set that told me I could play Toro Let's Party. When I clicked play though, it asked me to insert my Toro Let's Party disc. Unfortunately for me, I just so happened to leave my Toro Let's Party disc in my other pants, so I was not able to play today. The town didn't really have much else to do, and it seemed like a lot of the features that really would have made it interesting are now broken, but it was a really peaceful, well-designed little map, and I'm glad I played on it. It was pretty fun to just explore this old lost map that 0 Americans even got to play on back when PlayStation Home servers were still up. I'm sure there are Japanese people out there who do remember this map, but according to YouTube, only 19,000 Japanese people have ever watched my videos, so if you are one of those 19,000 Japanese people, hello. You are Japanese. The main Japanese hub world wasn't super interesting, but it was a really nice looking map that seemed to be permanently stuck in Christmas 2015 mode. Also, when I joined, an alert sound played and this Japanese error was permanently stuck to the top of my screen. Upon translating it, it apparently said, "Some functions are limited due to a server error." Oh. The O at the end of that sentence made me so mad that I had to leave Japan after seeing that and hopped on over into David Guetta World, which is probably the most absurd idea for a world ever. I swear I'm not making this up, but this is literally the only time I ever saw another person in my entire playthrough. I guess she's just a really big fan of David Guetta. This level was laid out like a club, and just like in a real club, she did not seem very interested in talking to me and was just staring at her phone. So, naturally, I took out my camera, got in her face, and took about 100 pictures of her. I walked over to the stage where I noticed quite a concerning lack of David Guetta and instead saw this lovely lady dancing around the pole. Honestly, I'm not even really sure who David Guetta is, but I did not know he got down like that. Also, if you're counting, there have now been 2 references to pole dancing in this one video. I am not sure how that happened, but I will work tirelessly to make sure it does not happen again. The rest of David Guetta World was just a big advertisement for Music Unlimited, which was Sony's now defunct version of Spotify exclusively for PlayStation consoles. There was also this DJ table that let me make a really bad mix, and you should honestly consider yourself lucky that I can't play it for you on YouTube because it was very terrible. After experiencing more than enough David Guetta for one lifetime though, I moseyed on over to the Star Wars Cantina. I really haven't seen Star Wars, but I think this is a 1-to-1 replica of that little bar where the little aliens play music. I walked in and took a few pictures of the bartender's face with the flash on, and then walked over to this private booth that was advertising the Star Wars Blu-ray box set. If you're a big Star Wars fan, this is definitely something to look forward to, and it will be coming out in September 2011, so you should probably get ready for that. I ended my short time in the Star Wars world by enjoying a nice soothing round of royalty-free music performed by little nasty aliens. I finally ended my long journey in the world of PlayStation Home by visiting the original hub world. If I'm not mistaken, this is exactly where you would be if you were to log onto this game in 2008. This level, despite being old, was just as well designed as basically all the other ones, and it was a cozy place to kill time. Also, in true PlayStation Home spirit, it had an area dedicated exclusively to playing a Sony commercial. This was honestly one of the most interesting commercials that I saw in my time here though, because I couldn't find a single mention of it anywhere online. I think it was advertising a Sony camera or something and seemed to feature this woman named Lauren who made a web series called Linked. I tried fairly hard to find anything out about this commercial, but I just couldn't. It's pretty interesting that a commercial that seems to have a somewhat high budget is basically lost online, and the only place you can see it in the current year is to get on PlayStation Home, of all places. The rest of the old hub world was filled with locations I couldn't go to and advertisements for different PS Home features, but there was this little minigame in the center of the town that let you control an alien spacecraft and fly it around and crash it into yourself, which was a nice touch. I walked through the one door that was still functional and was taken back to the mall that I visited at the very start of my play session, so I figured this was a pretty good time to wrap it up, and that I had seen a pretty good amount of what PlayStation Home had to offer. It was time to bid one final goodbye to PlayStation Home by taking a ride on the lamest Ferris wheel in human history. Playing through these dead games was truly a pretty weird experience, and I'm glad there are more than a few people out there fighting to keep stuff like this alive. No matter what your opinion is about any of the games we played today, I think it's pretty fair to say that none of them died because they were bad. They mostly all died because it requires a stupid amount of work to actually play them, which might as well be a death sentence for any game that isn't super popular. If anything though, playing through these games taught me that online spaces are very transient. They can be here one day and gone the next, so it's pretty important that you enjoy what you have while you have it, even if what you have is a freakishly small man in a Mountain Dew hoodie carrying a 9mm handgun. I had a lot of fun making this video, so I do hope you enjoyed it, and I also hope you consider supporting the actual people who are putting in the hard work to get stuff like Gmod 9, Cybertown, and PlayStation Home back online. Also, if you couldn't tell already, this video was inspired by Redline and the Dead Game series that he does on his channel, so if you'd like to see more stuff like this, go look at his videos with your eyeballs. If you know of any more dead games that might be worth checking out, please write them down on a piece of paper and drop it off at this McDonald's in Peoria, Illinois, and I'll swing by to collect it within the next week. Alright, that's it. Thanks for watching. I've been Ratlobber. Peace.